Does Batman 1989 hold up in 2024? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Out of the Storm podcast. Today, I'm excited because this was the first time that me and Hervé have actually watched the movie that Daniel is about to introduce.
So today we're talking about Batman 1989, which I've seen a bunch of times, and the two of you have just seen for the first time. This was one of the first big superhero movies that really sold people on the idea that superhero movies could be real movies for adults. So my question to you is, watching this for the first time in 2024, how does it hold up? What are your impressions?
For me, I would say that this Batman film, for me personally, I connected more with Michael Keaton as Bruce rather than as Batman. I think as Batman, he was cool, but there were better Batmans out there, especially in the one in Dark Knight Rises. However, as Bruce, he was probably one of the best. For me
Why is
personally.
that?
As Bruce, he felt like, even though he was a confident guy and he was trying to hide his identity, he felt very mysterious at the same time. So it felt like I was watching Batman, if that makes sense, but he was still Bruce. Whereas, and it's like it felt very natural to him that he was hiding a secret, right? You could see like the way that he was just portraying himself as this confident guy, but you could still see there's an underlying secret that he's trying to hold back from Vicky Vale. You could tell, even though he was trying to hide his identity from her, but just in general, like watching him from the film, you could tell that he still had a secret underlying his whole persona of being like that rich, cool guy. I feel like with Batman, he was cool. Like I said, I felt like he felt very cool, but it felt like he was doing a job. You know what I'm saying? And I do get it, like a lot of the times, I don't know what like the portrayal is in other Batman movies, but this one, he didn't feel like one in one with Batman, as in like it felt like Batman was a job rather than it was himself, like another part of himself. So yeah, I just felt like seeing him as Bruce was more like he just felt like the ultimate Bruce in comparison to the other Bruce. Because the other Bruces felt like they were proper damaged. Whereas him, he was damaged, but he made a good job of kind of like hiding the damagedness.
Javier, what was your takeaway?
Still trying to put my thoughts in it. I'm a big Batman lover. I love like all the modern Batman movies, and then the kind of like Batman shows that come out, etc. It was good, but I didn't connect with it the way that I thought that I would connect with it. In my opinion, I feel like similar to what Jonathan said, the Batman was a little bit weak for my kind of like liking, especially like the first time you see him, the opening, and fair enough, like it was sort of back in 1989, so they had like a lot of restrictions in terms of sort of some of the action sequences that they could do, and sort of some of the camera tricks that they kind of do with Batman in some of the modern films. But it just felt very like his first like opening when he sort of confronts the bad guys on top of the roof, and then he just says, "Tell your friends about me." Basically, I felt I was like kind of like underwhelmed because he didn't really do anything to them to like really find them. So you didn't really get a sense of, there's this guy going around sort of beating up criminals and you should be afraid of him. Basically, it was just kind of he shot like lapelled him with like the rope around his ankles and then just said, "Oh, tell your friends about me." So it was a little bit underwhelming at that.
Yeah, which is a scene that has appeared in other Batman movies, right? The Nolan Batman does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Other versions too.
It's like saying like the latest one where with what's his name as in the Batman, the Matt Reeves one. Oh, what's the character's name? What's the actor's name? Oh, I forgot his name.
The Twilight guy.
Twilight guy, yeah. Twilight guy.
Name.
I forgot his name. I don't know why I forgot his name. He's a great actor. But like his kind of like introduction as Batman is like very like menacing. It's like sort of you really feel the presence and you really feel the fear, and then you like feel the brutality of it. And that's actually one thing I did like about this is like kind of like the tone of it. I know like I forgot the actor's name again. Jack Nicholson's Joker is a bit over the top at times in this movie, but I did quite like kind of like the tone and the sort of the feel of it. Again, granted this was like kind of like 1989, and obviously it's got like a lot more darker and grittier sort of since then. But I thought it'd be like super camp, compared like based on some of the things that I've seen of the movie without sort of having watching it previously. His relationship with like Vicky as well. Again, I can't understand it, but I didn't really connect it. I didn't really like buy it, so it just didn't work for me. And even like the Joker's transition from him just kind of like being like a bad guy, like a henchman or whatever, to then becoming the Joker, it just seems too sudden and abrupt. And I feel like there's like a lot of things where things happen for the plot's sake as opposed to it following along logically, basically, because the Joker's character from sort of before he fell into the acid to after, it's like two complete sort of different performances.
Yeah, that was my actual problem. The issues that I had with it was that was definitely one of them, was like Joker's transition into the type of character that he became, as in like, so there was no inkling that he had that mad side to him, that Joker side to him, even though I think his Joker performance was great at times. It was really great at times. It was a bit over the top sometimes. It felt very theatrical sometimes, but overall, I really enjoyed his Joker character. Like, there were times I was like, yeah, this guy's giving that sinister feeling. Like, it felt like he was the actual Joker in a freaking card deck. I was like, if there was a Joker, it'd be this guy. I think I was a bit confused as well when he kind of like transitioned into the Joker guy. So okay, so I said, I came to a conclusion that maybe, because remember when the surgeon showed him his face, right? And then he started laughing. I was like, okay, maybe he just broke, and that was the moment where he just transitioned from that, because he did have like a little, because he had like so before him turning into a Joker, he was like the player type of guy, right? Obviously he was having an affair with his boss's girl, so he had like a smart ass to him, and he felt very confident, right? So I said, okay, and he was very slick with his words too, so he was like a bit disrespectful. I was like, all right, cool. I could see it a bit, because you could still see some aspects of that character in the new Joker, but he was still like a Joker. Like, he just transitioned into a whole new character, even though he did have some aspects of his original character, what he was like before the Joker. So I said, all right, cool. Maybe in that moment where the surgeon just showed him what he actually looks like, maybe just cracked, but still, it felt a bit like abrupt and just like, okay, where did this come from? So that was like one issue as well. And especially with what's her name, Vicky. Yeah, that whole relationship, I just don't understand. Like, I remember there was a scene where she said to Batman, to Bruce, where she says, after that first day, I knew I loved you. I said, okay, that was a bit mad, because either you love him because he's got peace, money, or like we're missing, like we as an audience were missing something, as in like we're missing the connection, because they didn't feel like they had any connection. The only connection that they had was physical, when they had that one night stand. So I was like, so how, like, what did he do? Like, you know what I'm saying? There wasn't that much of an interaction for you to actually fall in love with the guy, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, apparently the issue with this film, especially when it comes to her character, is because she seemed like a damsel in distress in this film. And apparently in the comics or something like that, there's more to her character. So this is what I heard. Like, I was reading articles, they were saying how fans were reading, not fans, but just in general, that there was like just a general point that was pointed out, was that like, yeah, the movie didn't do her justice, because she just presented her as a damsel in distress, when in reality there's way more to her character. So I felt the same. I felt like, okay, she just seems like, firstly, she is just weird. And also, it was weird as well that the way that Joker just ended up like fascinated over her and just becoming obsessed with her. I was like, okay, where did that come from as well? Because he was a guy that got he was a guy that got girls, bro. Like, so how all of a sudden is he just fighting over this one girl, obsessing over this one girl like this? I just didn't understand that. But yeah, in terms of Vicky as well, it just seemed like, they could have done more of her character, because she was just getting kidnapped, saved, kidnapped, saved. I was like,
yeah. So I think with the Joker specifically, there's a bunch of things missing, right? And I think you've hit on a few of those, right? One is, why does he fixate on Vicky Vale so much? But I think the really important one is, why the Joker, right? Like, there's little things that foreshadow this. Like, he's got a deck of playing cards, and I think he makes like jokes that are not jokes but supposed to be cruel at the very start, where he talks to this other mob guy. I think it kind of goes from 0 to 100 instantly, right? Yeah. And I think the movie is a lot stronger if you just ignore the origins of the Joker, which is a shame, because the movie spends so much time on it. But once he is the Joker, I think he's a lot of fun, and he does a lot of classic Joker stuff. And I think it needs to be put into the context of the only other Joker that had been seen on screen is the one from the 1960s version, which is pure camp. Like, if you've ever seen an episode of that is a children's show, and it's completely over the top and silly. And if you then see Jack Nicholson, like a respected actor, put on this exaggerated and larger than life performance, just doing classical Joker things, right? It's like the second half of the movie watches a little bit like somebody made a list of things the Joker is known for, and then they do all of them. Mm-hmm. And I think the effect that it's supposed to have is just, it's a real actor in a real movie doing these things that you only know from the comic books and from the 1960s version. And I think that has not aged well, because in the meantime, we've had better Jokers, and we take it for granted that Batman is for adults, right? Maybe even too much sometimes, where it starts to take itself extremely seriously, and all the fun is kind of missing from most contemporary portrayals of Batman. But I think that is the context you need to see it in, and that also means it hasn't aged terribly well, at least for me.
You know what it is as well? I think, firstly, like, for me, the Joker's performance, like even though I said he was a bit theatrical at times, I really enjoyed his Joker. Like I said, there was moments where he felt very like sinister and in a jokery type of way. So for me, overall, I think he did like a good job. I just think when it comes to the Batman and the Joker, because we've been presented with different, Batmans and different Jokers, obviously now we're going back in time and we're watching this classic and seeing, okay, I think it's just basically based on your preference, right? So which do you prefer? Do you prefer the emo Batman, which was the guy from Twilight? Do you prefer the kind of jokery type of Batman, which was the one with, what's his name? He was in the one that was Batman vs Superman. What's his name again?
Ben Affleck.
Yeah, Ben Affleck. You enjoying that one? The Dark Knight Batman, I think that was probably one of my favorite. I think that was probably the favorite Batman for me. Yeah, also you enjoyed that type of Batman. So I think, because we've been presented with different type of Batmans. It's just one of them ones where it's like, okay, when you watch this film, your experience and your opinion to this film is going to be different in comparison to someone who hasn't seen Batman at all and just been introduced to this type of Batman. So pretty much I'm leading up to a question. So when this film came out, do you know what the reaction was?
It blew people's minds. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like it had been 20 plus years since the Dawn of Superman movies. And as far as I can remember, there had not been serious superhero movies in between. So it was a thing for children. It was niche. It was something that serious people couldn't and wouldn't enjoy.
Yeah.
And then Tim Burton comes along, established director, Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, Kim Basinger. These are all real actors, right? And now they're doing a Batman movie. And I think that's how it would be perceived. I don't know what the analog is. I was going to say like we had a Barbie movie last year. That was kind of similar, right? Where like it's a toy, but it's a real movie with real actors in it and everybody enjoys it. Yeah. And I think it's similar in terms of something that people normally wouldn't take seriously suddenly being taken seriously because somebody put this effort into making it work.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's how I would describe it.
That makes sense.
So for me, really, this movie is a lot like Star Trek, the original series, because I don't terribly enjoy Star Trek, the original series, but I realize its place in history, and I realize that the things I like couldn't have existed without it. Right? So it's an essential stepping stone. But if I go back and watch an episode of Star Trek, the original series, I'm kind of bored. Like I like Kirk and I like Spock and all of these characters, but like the style and how the story is told and what stories are told doesn't really grip me. But it was a stepping stone towards the things I do like. And that's kind of how I look at Batman 1989, where I think there's some things to like and a lot of things that don't work. But without this, we don't get Spider-Man and X-Men in 2000. And without that, we don't get the Dark Knight. And without that, we don't get the MCU. And without that, we're not where we are today, right? So I think it's an important and essential piece in the history of the genre. Even though the movie I don't think has aged that well.
I did like what they did with Gotham, though, to be fair, and like kind of like the opening shots, like a lot of like the design, it like really like kind of transported you into a different reality. I know like in modern day, like Gotham kind of looks a lot more like realistic and like a lot more like some like the modern cities that we have today, but like that's like one of the first things that I picked up when watching the movie was just like that feeling, and it just gave that extra level of immersion and kind of like the believability of some of the wacky characters that would sort of maybe potentially live in sort of this world as opposed to some of the real world settings.
So you just had that like level of filthiness that struggling cities have, and I feel like a lot of movies fail to kind of like replicate that, whereas in this film they kind of gave that they were able to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, the city just felt very corrupt and dirty, which was perfect.
It's kind of simultaneously dirty and seedy and run down and also really stylized, right? There's like kind of two different Gothams in this movie, right? There's the high society penthouses with the gargoyles and the big windows and the skyscrapers in the background, and then there's the dirty alleys with smoke coming out of every crack and every corner. And you believe that both can exist in the same place, right? And I think the visual design in this is part of what makes this movie work, where it is stylized and therefore because it's not realistic, we believe the Joker and the Batman more. I think we're used to very grounded And realistic is kind of a loaded word with his stuff, but like we expect it to look like it exists in the real world, right? And this just looks like a comic book.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was gonna say.
That's not a criticism.
And I was gonna say that I'd as well. Like, even though it had like some realism in it in terms of the look, in terms of struggling cities, it wasn't too realistic. So it still had that comic book feel. Like it still had that added value of not added value, but it still had that look of a comic book feel to it. I find it remarkable that people can do that because it's not easy to do. Because sometimes people go overboard, like directors go overboard. Either for them it's like one-sided. Either it's completely fantasy and looks there's nothing about it looks realistic, or it's so realistic nothing about it shows any creativity, and there's no like sense of fancy depending on what genre the film is. So yeah, I think they did a really good job when it comes to that.
Like Nolan's Gotham is just Chicago, right? There's nothing heightened about it.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean doesn't mean it looks bad. It's like that's the kind of Gotham you need in that kind of movie. But here it's like a fairy tale, like a dark fairy tale.
I did feel bad for Michael Keaton in this movie as well, just in terms of like some of the action sequences that he could do. Again, based on the restrictions that they had in like 1989, like it just felt weird to see sort of towards the end of the movie, kind of like Batman running up some stairs in like sort of where the church was, and it was in the church, when like the bell
tower, right? Yeah,
the bell tower, yeah. It felt not like, again, underwhelming, but like based on sort of the time of it was probably like a little more impressive. But like when like the bell's kind of like falling down, and he just like stands against the wall and like goes past him, it's like you kind of want him to do something a little bit more creative and like a little bit more daring to kind of like maybe get out of the way of the bell or something like that. And then just like, and I appreciate what they were trying to do in terms of like trying to introduce sort of like some of his kind of like gadgets and gizmos and stuff like that. So like his back car looked cool, looked very good. That was a really good design. When he tried to do like the thing where he like disappears in smoke, it didn't quite work.
You could still see him,
yeah. But I did appreciate that they tried to do that, and they tried to incorporate that into sort of like into the movie. And it was I think
that might be something that looks better on a 4:3 television from the 90s.
Possibly.
I think that might be one of these movies that have not made the transition to HD and 4K well, because suddenly you see all the shortcuts and tricks they've used. I imagine that is an effect that looked good enough 30 years ago on TV.
Yeah, probably. And the other thing that was like a little bit hard to believe was like, do you know when like they do the thing where they make him just like suddenly disappear, like, the bad guy like turns around for a second and they cut back around and he's just like disappeared. But then you see like shots of him just like running through the streets with Vicky and stuff like that, and it's just like, it's not quite like I couldn't imagine sort of this Batman being the one that just like is able to just like stealthily sort of disappear whilst you have your back turned and you don't know that he's gone, basically. So it's just like a few shortcomings that, again, it's just restrictions of the time, and I just feel like probably would have elevated the movie a little bit more.
It's a little bit baffling. Like famously, Michael Keaton could not move his head. Like this in the costume, you cannot turn your head. There's 4 movies in this continuity, I think, and I think in the third they fixed that, and they make sure to put in a scene where Batman turns his head just to show people. But it's a little bit baffling to me that they had this restriction, right? Presumably they did this because they had no other choice. But then they wrote a plot that has him be in a lot of one-to-one fights, where you could have just put him into the shadow a lot more, and he's more of an investigator than a fighter, right? So I think that was a bad choice. That the plot requires him to get into a lot of fights when he's out in the open, and he has to move quickly, and that I think that even looks bad by 1989 standards, but it looks even worse as time goes on, as we are used to better fight choreography and better effects. And like every Batman costume since then has worked better, I think.
How did you guys feel about his kills? Because obviously one thing that you mentioned before, Daniel, is Batman's not known to kill people, right? So here, I'm sure he killed a couple of people in this film.
I don't think he outright kills. He uses guns, which has since then become a big taboo for Batman. Sometimes it like for some people that's a red line, that Batman can never use guns, and then in some versions he does. I think if I remember correctly, he used it to break open, like to damage things, right? He didn't shoot people outright, right?
I mean, there was the scene during the parade where there's like people like there was like obviously like the float that the goons were on, and he's like outright like aiming at the goons and sort of like
that's true.
Yeah, so it's kind of borderline whether he actually does kill people in this or not. Obviously, you don't explicitly see it. One thing about that though, I did kind of see the inspiration that Nolan took from that scene where he's like flying at him when he's flying at the Joker and he's got him like in his crosshairs, and like the Joker's kind of like begging him to kind of like hit him basically, and obviously like that within sort of the Dark Knight where sort of Batman's going at him with the car and then he like eventually like bails out. I actually did like pick up on that, and that was like pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, because the scene where he casually drops the Joker, obviously this is before he was the Joker, so that was a scene that told me like, oh whoa, like what was that for? Because he didn't know who he was. Like, well,
at that point, Napier's just a guy, right? Just
exactly,
some mob guy.
Exactly. So when he dropped in there, I remember he even said to Alfred as well, the guy's still alive. Yeah, he was like, Jack's still alive. So it was like he actually tried to kill him in that scene. So it was like, okay, like where did that come from? As in, like, was that the intention? Because like, so Batman in the comics is not a killer, right?
So I'm not sure when this was codified. So Batman, like as we know him. So I'm not up to speed on the comics. I don't know what he's been like up to in the past decade. But generally speaking, Batman does not kill and does not use guns. In part because of his trauma that he saw his parents get murdered and he doesn't want anybody else to go through that, and so he doesn't kill. The other part is that his goal is supposed to be that he wants to act as an outside force to fix the justice system. Right? In a lot of versions of Batman, he sees the justice system is broken, but he wants to fix it. And so he does not want to cross certain lines because that would further damage the justice system, right? And I'm not sure if this was codified before or after 1989. And I think in this one, it doesn't even look like they're making a point by Batman doing this. Yeah. It's more like he just does it.
Yeah, because
that kind of tells me this might be a 90s thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, when did like his murderous, like what triggered his murderous tendencies? Because there wasn't a scene. Maybe it was the fact that Joker shot and killed someone, so that might have, triggered a traumatic experience where he experienced his father getting shot, but that wasn't shown. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that's why I was a bit confused. I was like, oh, okay, so he's just casually killing people. It was a bit worrying. Like, okay, so but why? Like, why is there a doubt? Because I think that was supposed to create doubt in the audience. Like, okay, is this hero really a villain? If that makes sense. Like, does he have like this like murderous tendencies that which we should be aware of and be careful of? Like, do you know what I'm saying? I didn't see why they added that scene if there wasn't going to lead to something.
It didn't read as intentional to me. I think it just kind of happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It does feel like there was like that one moment where it said like the Joker made Batman and then the Batman subsequently then made the Joker.
Yeah.
And there was kind of like meant to play on the parallel, or it seemed like they were trying to play on the parallel of sort of them kind of being not the same person, but like kind of like-minded essentially in terms of like a little bit psychologically damaged. Obviously, like Batman from seeing his parents being killed and the Joker from being shoved in the acid. But was there more of that duality within the movie? Because like the one thing that I remember is like obviously in Vicky's apartment where Batman walks in, or like Michael Keaton or Bruce Wayne, whatever, walks in and he's like, nice place you have. It looks very spacious. And then they very intentionally have something of the Joker come in and say the exact same thing like afterwards. But I don't know whether there was like other like similarities or parallels that they had throughout the movie. I don't know if I like missed it.
I think it was just a cause and effect thing. I don't think there was necessarily like direct parallels as in like similar personalities or characters in it, because obviously he drops the Joker into the whatever that liquid thing was, and then obviously the Joker, there was a scene when, so it wasn't actually the Joker that killed his parents, right? In that scene that they showed,
it was
yeah.
That didn't even look like him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it didn't look like him at all.
That's why I was a bit confused. I was like, wait, what the hell? And I was like, wait, was that supposed to be the Joker or was that someone else? That did not look like him.
It was supposed to be him, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Okay, cool.
Cool. I didn't like that they made the Joker be the one that kills his parents. Not for any particular reasons, but it just seemed.
But that is cause and effect, though.
It is cause and effect, and again, like again, Daniel, I'll let you answer some of the question I had. But if there's enough evidence in the movie that kind of shows that cause and effect and sort of like that duality between them and that dynamic between them, then yeah, it kind of probably makes sense. But if there's not, then I just feel like it's a little bit thrown in at the end.
It does seem like a little bit of a half measure, right? Like there's this whole thing about you, like them creating each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it says very much.
Yeah.
It's just on its own. It's not my favorite version. I think it's much better when the murder of Batman's parents is just a matter of this is how bad things have gotten in Gotham.
Yeah.
And it's random, and it's just kind of reality catching up with this hyper wealthy family, right? So even they can't insulate themselves anymore. I think thematically for who Batman is, that's much more interesting. But in this movie, it's supposed to be a random mugging, right? But it just ends up being Jack Napier, right? The guy who later becomes the Joker.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have an issue, but I think it's pretty cool. Like just the whole cause and effect thing, seeing okay, look how one action, even though it was the action that was done years ago, look at the effect that can have. It creates one created a hero, and obviously the hero ends up, creating the villain, and then their features kind of entwine. So I didn't necessarily have an issue with it.
It would be more interesting if the Joker wasn't already a villain before like then it would show like something traumatic happened to both of them. One became a hero, one became a villain. The Joker was pretty much already a villain in the movie, so
yeah, it feels like the beginning of a theme, right? Yeah. Where if the movie was about this, then it could be something interesting. But it doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be that one instance where they kind of realized they created each other. And like the Batman and the Joker already are mirror images, right? Like they're complete opposites. One is order, one is chaos. One is serious, one is funny or like colorful, right? But I don't know that the movie goes very far with that idea. Like I think it's a fine idea. It just you need to take it somewhere. And I don't think the movie really does. They kind of just mention it.
It spent too much time with like the dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Vicky, and I guess probably it was more fitting for the time to have like the the kind of like the damsel in distress or sort of the love interest in the movie, probably more fitting of the time. But I feel like that wasn't executed well enough.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really, again, like there was like too many jumps in terms of like the relationship, and when it got to the point where Bruce Wayne was debating whether to reveal that he is Batman to her, it's just like, I don't know how we got to this situation. I don't know how this is you trust with your biggest secret.
And then even when she went to his cave, I was like, wait. How did this happen? How the hell did she get access to the cave? Yeah, I know he let her in, but like, why? How? Why? Like, when
it is established that Alfred thinks Bruce is on the wrong path. And he kind of forces the issue by letting Vicky into the cave.
But even his reaction to seeing Vicky in the cave, he wasn't like angry at Alfred. He wasn't surprised. Like he had a jolt reaction, but that's about it. I'm like, she's like, she knows you're Batman, and you struggled so much just to reveal that you are Batman. So I get sometimes when you're just put in a position, you handle it differently. You handle it as if like nothing's happening, but still in that situation, there should have been a bad reaction in my opinion, because it's not like I'm saying you're telling her you're Batman and you're in the open. Do you know what I'm saying? She's actually in the cave. Like she's in your home, Batman's home. That was a bit crazy. That
I just took it as he realizes what Alfred did and why, and now he can't. There's no undoing this, so he might as well roll with it. But yeah, like Joel
reaction, because he didn't react at all, as into Alfred. Just
not outwardly, right? I think you can see in his eyes that he is surprised and that he sees her, he sees Alfred, and he kind of figures it out and then kind of goes from there. I think is in character for Bruce Wayne. Like he wouldn't make a big scene exactly, right? I wouldn't expect that from Bruce Wayne. But I do think in general the plot kind of has some gaps in it, like how exactly the relationship between them progresses and that sort of thing. And that is kind of that scene is kind of caught up in that dynamic, that there's pieces missing anyway. And now we kind of jump to this other place and we kind of just have to go with it.
But one thing I did really like, because I actually liked the story of the film, and I love the tone, the way that was presented. Like there were times where, like even when it started, I thought, oh my god, this is gonna be a very like, like those corny, theatrical, old mood type of movies, right? I thought it was gonna be that, but then there were certain scenes where there was no background music, especially like with Joker, like the Joker scene remember the scene where he burnt that guy alive? That scene was entertaining. Like that scene where there was no like background music. I don't believe there was background music, but I just felt like they managed to kind of like grab your attention with the tone of the film. So it wasn't like they had some comedic scenes, they had serious scenes, they had an aspect of a musical scene where the Joker was going through the groups of people, which by the way, I really like, you could see like Joker's influence and how he's able to connect with people in this film as well, which at times, do you know what I'm saying? So which was like, that was a good touch, because obviously you see in the recent Joker film how, he's pretty much like a cult leader and how, he just accidentally, subconsciously is able to just connect with people. But I feel like the tone of the film I really enjoyed, besides the story, which I was surprised because I thought it was going to be just a corny type of old film, but it wasn't.
One place I thought they were going to go with the Joker was like to really like narrow in on like the mob boss Joker portrayal of him, But then he got distracted by the whole like love interest, by the whole like obsession with Vicky, as opposed to like him being the sort of clown prince essentially, or like the essentially like head of like the mob in sort of in Gotham, which I thought they were going there with it when he sort of killed, was it Grissom or something like that, at the start of the movie, where like that, and I thought he was gonna like take over and they were gonna kind of really show him really like implementing things, but it just got a bit too sidetracked from that story.
But they kind of did though. Because when you fried the guy.
Yeah, they did, and they obviously like they have the scene where like all the other like kind of like mob bosses are like in the room and stuff like that. But then again, he just gets sidetracked with his obsession with this girl, and it just kind of like loses me a little bit.
There's already 4 Jokers in this movie, right? And then you add the Vicky Vale stuff on top of it, right? So there's mob boss Joker, there's Agent of Chaos Joker, there's making a social point Joker. I'm probably forgetting one, but they all exist in like there have been different versions of the Joker, right? And he's kind of several of them at the same time, and the movie kind of switches between them without big justification.
Yeah.
Right? That is something that kind of holds it back, where I think the individual scenes are better than the movie as a whole. And then we derail the whole thing by him just going after Vicky Vale, which has nothing to do with anything else. Like not like none of his other goals, none of his personality or anything like that. He isn't even like the entitled type. Right, it's not like it's established that like he is interested in Vicky Vale and she rejects him and he takes it personally because he gets what he wants. Like that is also not really him, right?
Yeah, that's why I thought there was like an underlying reason for why he went after Vicky Vale, because when he saw the picture, he was like, oh, so I thought, okay, maybe like he knows that she's connected to Batman and he's, that's what's intrigued, that's what's making him more obsessed because he wants to get to Batman because he had an obsession with Batman, but that wasn't it. Like he was just obsessed with us. I was like. He's not even that type. Like the Joker before this wasn't that type. Like I said, he was in an affair with his freaking boss's wife or girlfriend. So woman for him wasn't a problem. So of course it's a problem now because of his face and all of that. But still, I just did that just didn't make sense.
And then in contrast, we have some really iconic scenes, right? Like the one in the art gallery or the parade where he hands out money and or when Batman flies at him with the Batwing, he takes out this enormous gun, right? Like these are all cool scenes and but they like we said earlier, kind of feels like a checklist. And it doesn't feel like it's a cohesive personality of the Joker, which is fine for a version of the Joker that doesn't have an origin, right? If he's just an agent of chaos and he can do whatever from one scene to the next. Like some versions of the Joker have been like this and they work, but here we get an explicit origin for him. So it would seem like the origin is important for who he is, but it's not really.
So is this one of the greatest Batman movies? Is it the greatest Batman film of all the films that we've seen?
It would probably be close to the bottom of my list of Batman movies anyways.
Yeah.
So would you say the Ben Affleck ones were better than this one?
Did he have a movie? Or he had like Batman versus Superman?
Didn't he have more? Didn't he have like a solo film?
Nope.
No, he didn't. He didn't make a solo.
Oh, he didn't.
There was Dawn of Justice, and then Justice League, and one or two others. But there was supposed to be a solo Batman movie, but that never happened. I have to agree. This one is, like I said earlier, it's kind of has historical value, and I think if you like the genre and if you like the character, it's good to have seen it. And there are also great scenes in it. But as a movie, I don't think it holds up very much.
Yeah, I just think it was like the boom when it comes to that, just comic books. Just pretty much starting that. But
it didn't start the boom. This predates the boom by over a decade. And I think that's interesting by itself. So like the boom really started in 2000 with X-Men and Spider-Man. And then we started getting a whole bunch of not great movies, and then Nolan happened, and then the MCU happened. And this one is like 11 years before X-Men and Spider-Man, or 10 years. So I think it wasn't the spot that it's not part of a trend. Like it just kind of stands on its own. It's just somebody looking at the Batman mythos and saying, I can do something with this. I think on that level, it's pretty cool. It didn't start a big trend or anything like that.
Oh, it didn't start a big trend. Oh, I thought it was like the spot.
But there were there was like Batman and Robin and Batman Begins and all of that. But and those were so bad they basically killed the genre for half a decade. Like if you've not seen them, it's worthwhile checking them out just to see how bad they are. And if you think we've had bad superhero movies in the last couple of years, watch Batman and Robin.
Was that before this Batman?
After. So there's basically essentially 3 sequels, but with different actors playing Batman. And they get campier and campier over time until it's just unbearable. And like the director issued a formal apology at one point for having made that last movie. It's bad. And like one of them has Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, and every line is an ice pun. It's like things like "Ice to meet you" and stuff like that. It's really bad. So this basically started this mini boom that lasted about 6 years or so, and then nothing for several years, and then we had the resurgence with the Raimi Spider-Man movies and X-Men and stuff like that. But even the sequels are nothing like this. Right? Tonally, they're completely different. Different actors, and the plot is not directly connected.
How many movies did Michael Keaton have?
One, I think. I'm not sure off the top of my head if he was in one or two of them. I think one.
Wasn't he in Batman Returns?
I'd have to check.
The Riddler. Was he in that? Ooh.
Well, and he was in The Flash.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Many years later.
Yeah. He even acts the same way in The Flash, which is crazy that you think about it.
Yeah. The Flash is its own topic. I think it would actually be kind of interesting to put this and The Flash next to each other and just compare them, because they're supposed to be the same character, and kind of as bookends of an era, basically, of superhero movies. Right? This began serious superhero movies, and Flash was basically kind of the height of the awfulness. And like now I kind of want to do a discussion where we kind of watch both and just contrast them. Or somebody should do this, but I don't think Keaton Batman is the same character in either.
I'm trying to remember.
Oh, you don't think so? In the Batman,
like he's supposed to be, but he's not.
He gave me that feel though. Well, of course, when we introduced him, he's like this depressed, drunk. Was he a drunk in that film? I don't even know. But
yeah, he'd been retired for decades at that movie.
But as Bruce, of course, he wasn't the same. But as Batman, he felt very rigid, very a man short of words. Just for me, he gave me the same feel.
Like part of it is that I don't really have a good handle on this Batman either. Like just in this movie, like I don't really know what makes him tick. He seems kind of like a blank slate. Like I'm not sure how codified Batman's, like Bruce Wayne's personality was in 1989, but it feels like he doesn't have one at all. Right? Like there's like signposts, right? There's like the death of his parents and stuff like that.
Was that a mistake putting the death of his parents too late in the movie? Like obviously, like we know his backstory, but I was like, when they revealed it, I was trying to think of it as someone that hadn't watched the movie, like that didn't know the mythos of Batman, and obviously like knowing that his parents died and this and the other. I was like, it would have been a good defining of like why Batman is at the start of the movie, because I know a lot of movies just kind of like get it over and done with, and then sort of build from there essentially. Yeah. So it didn't really feel earned. If I'm honest, where it was in the movie, it didn't feel like we'd like built up this kind of like this understanding and this persona of him, and he's this really complex person, and the reason that he is this person is because of this bad thing that happened to him. Essentially, I just feel like it was, again, like a lot of this movie was just kind of like tacked on towards the end of the movie.
Yeah, I think if you make a Batman movie today, you can skip it because everybody knows it, right? But I don't think that was true in 1989, especially for general theater going on audiences. And in the movie, it doesn't really have a purpose, right? It's kind of like, hey, this is a Batman thing, let's put it in somewhere. It's shown in the realization about that Jack Napier was the one who killed his parents, right? But I think if this is not only the first Batman movie or the first serious Batman movie, but the first real superhero movie in, I don't know, almost 20 years, something like that, you probably want to, like, if you're ever going to do an origin story, it's going to be here, right?
No, but I meant so late in the movie, because like in...
Which would mean doing it earlier, yeah.
Sorry?
Like if you make this an origin story, you put that scene much earlier in the movie, right? To explain why is Batman this way. So it's a bit strange that the movie acts as if you're supposed to know all this stuff, right? And I don't know that in the context in which it came out, that was something they could assume about the audience.
I think they were just trying to build onto his mystery, because I think as Bruce, he had a mysterious side to him. As Batman, no, you're right. As Batman, he felt very bland. As in, like, you didn't know, like you said, you didn't know what made him tick. He just felt like like I said, for me, just felt like it felt like a 9-to-5 job to be like, I'm just wearing this suit and then go and do my job. Do you know what I'm saying? But as Bruce, I think as Bruce, it was like, okay, he felt, there was still something mysterious about him that, you wanted to find out, like, why is he this way? As in, like, what is it exactly that he's trying to hide? What is it exactly that he is hiding? So I think that's why they might have just added it at the end. If it worked, I'm not arguing if it worked or not. I don't know, but in terms of just why I think they did it that way, they just wanted to build up towards the mystery.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of had the opposite thing where I thought there was a pretty decent handle on Batman, but I didn't know who Bruce Wayne was in this movie.
Seriously?
Yeah, like I don't think there's very much where he acts like in other versions of Batman. It's very clear that Batman is the real identity, and Bruce Wayne is an act he puts on to maintain his cover, right? And
Yeah.
like there's some kind of purpose to what he does as Bruce Wayne, right?
Mm.
That's not the only version of Batman, right? But generally everything's in service of the Batman persona, and the Bruce Wayne persona is an act in some way, right? Even if there's a real Bruce Wayne under there, him playing like the rich playboy and whatever else, that's in almost all versions there, right? As an act he puts on, and the real Bruce Wayne either doesn't exist, or the real Bruce Wayne is a third person who only Alfred sees. And I didn't feel like anything like that was really here.
I see what you mean, but I feel like for me, Bruce Wayne's always trying to hide his identity. So I feel like that is his character in itself. Whereas with Batman, from the other Batmans I've seen, is like being internal conflicts, and when it comes to like, especially like when it comes to like killing people, right? As in like he tries not to kill certain people, but he'll end up having to come to that decision. Whereas with this Batman, it was like, I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, like even the scene with the Joker where he just drops it, it was like, why did that happen? Or he just felt very one-dimensional. Whereas with Bruce, it was like two sides to him, which is why I think Bruce was done more better than Batman, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I just experienced it the exact opposite way, where I thought Batman was well realized and Bruce Wayne was kind of there. But yeah, it's interesting that we experienced that so differently.
But isn't there like a complexity when it comes to Batman though? Is he supposed to be presented as like a one-dimensional character where it's like, okay, he's got a purpose, he's got a role, and he does it? Or isn't Batman supposed to have like I said before, internal conflicts, which adds different type of characters to him? Does that make sense?
I think there's a lot to Batman's personality and psychology. I just didn't think it was in this movie. And I don't know which parts kind of evolved in what era and what was present in 1989.
Well, who's supposed to give that off more though? Is it supposed to be Bruce or Batman?
I don't know. So for instance, like if you compare it with the Christian Bale version, I think there's like a lot of internal turmoil and doubt and like fixation on the mission and stuff like that. And in other versions of Batman, there's this control freak aspect where he has to micromanage anything. He doesn't trust anybody. He has to control everything. As a result, he causes sometimes more problems than he solves. Like there's Batman stories where he kind of pushes himself beyond the breaking point because he couldn't bring himself to ask for help, even though there were people who wanted to help. Like there's often stuff going on with his personality, right? He's not just the guy who dresses up as a bat and beats up muggers, right? There's a lot to Bruce Wayne as a person, depending on the version. I'm just missing it in this one, and like I said, I don't know if it should have been there in 1989. So to wrap up, any last thoughts?
Me, I'd say, like I said, it's not the best Batman out of all the Batmans I've seen. For me, it's Dark Knight Rises, but it was a fun Batman, and it was a Batman which I was surprised that I enjoyed in terms of like the film as a whole. Because me and Daniel have actually spoke about this before. I said I like the like dark Batman, so I liked the Batman with the Twilight guy. I think Daniel, you raised your concerns with him because obviously he was just out there just moving mad, just like he didn't really seem like, you know, the Batman in the comics. He didn't seem like he wasn't like the Batman in the comics in terms of like, because this one seemed like an emo Batman. But for me, like I said, I like the more serious tone, dark Knight Batman. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why I was surprised that I liked this Batman, because he was kind of like, it was presented in a way where he was kind of like the opposite of that. At times he was like he was mellow, mysterious, but he wasn't dark in comparison to the, you know, Batmans that we've seen. So that's why I was a bit surprised that I enjoyed this Batman. But I enjoyed him at times, even though he was bland a bit, but I did enjoy the movie as a whole. So it's not one of the best Batmans, but I had a good time with the film.
I think the story in this movie and the plot's serviceable enough for you to watch. I do feel like if you are a comic book movie fan, it's probably good to kind of like pay homage to sort of some of the stuff that's come before. Again, I know I hadn't watched it previously. I had always wanted to, but was always scared to sort of kind of delve into some of the previous Batmans, especially knowing how campy and the criticisms that a lot of it had received previously. But I feel like this was quite good. If anything, you know, you kind of want to go in there and just kind of watch Jack Nicholson as the Joker in this movie above anything else. And yeah, there's nothing really more to kind of like add to that. It's just serviceable with like some cool bits in there.
I think the historical value can't be understated, but there have just been better Batman since then. Yeah. And the story, I think, is it's definitely its weak point. There's great scenes in there, like, but it's the kind of thing where you look up the clips on YouTube every once in a while, right? Like, especially the Joker scenes. But as a story, I think it's a bit rough.
Well, guys, hopefully we've enjoyed today's discussion. Have they?
Yes, sir. Let us know your thoughts down below on the Batman. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think about the Joker? Is Jack Nicholson the best Joker? And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Thanks, guys. We will catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.